There are countless reasons why I believe that when the clock strikes zero tonight at NRG Stadium, the Washington Huskies will have won their first national title since 1991. And I can go into a lot of details when it comes to the offensive consistency, when it comes to the defense stepping up at the right time, when it comes to the ability to handle any situation. But there's one thing that stands out about this Washington team that makes them, in my opinion, a program of destiny. So let's talk about it. If you are new here, though, welcome on into the channel. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. So if this is the type of content you enjoy, plus coaching searches, transfer portal, anything going on with the offseason around college football, make sure that you smash the subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on what was your favorite moment from this season of the Washington Huskies. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, your best of bros, the drunk dude passed out in a Waffle House parking lot, Washington fans and college football aficionados everywhere about this channel, because we're on the race to 5,000 subscribers, then 25,000, then 50,000, and ultimately 100,000. And ladies and gentlemen, I think you know we're going to get there. So jump on in while the water's fine. Continue to follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson. That way, conversations surrounding our favorite sport never have to stop flowing. So I have been high on Washington since the start of the year. And a lot of you who have actually followed me over from the radio show to YouTube know this about me. I remember the first time I really started diving into Washington throughout my offseason. So for those of you that don't get to understand my daily dosage, I will spend probably about 2 weeks preparing for my week-long shows talking about college football, going conference by conference, what stands out about these teams, and I'll ultimately pick the offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, conference champion, and who walks away with the national title. And everything I kept coming back to was the thought process of Washington being disrespected. A lot of people are talking about this Washington team having to go through adversity throughout the regular season and having to listen to the outside people doubting them not being good enough to walk away as the Pac-12 champion, let alone even make it to the Pac-12 title game. If you go and you look at the voters, just the voting numbers in general, most people would probably have penciled in, not in pen, because you never want to write in pen when it comes to college football, because then it's permanent and you can't change your takes. But most people had USC and Oregon playing for the Pac-12 title game, the final Pac-12 title game as it ended up being in Las Vegas. And then you had a few stragglers that mentioned, well, Utah still is Utah. They're a great defense. They have one of the best coaches in college football. Their offense may be missing its quarterback, but we've seen what they've done with lesser talent before. They'll find their way to do it again. And you had a few stragglers mention UCLA because the hot name of Dante Moore coming on over. Oregon State was a trendy pick because of last year they went 10-3. And Washington just kind of sat there. Now, a few people put Washington in the postseason picture. I mean, in the Pac-12 picture, but not many actually had them winning the game. A lot of them just said, well, they'll get there. But once they're there, they're going to have to play Oregon again and watch what happens the second time against Oregon. Or they'll have to play USC again and watch what happens the second time against USC. Or Utah will take them down. And so the disrespect started well before the season. But what was so interesting to me is that you look about what was retained this offseason. How do you even have that thought? That to me was the biggest standout. I went back and I looked at the roster about returning production. And I understand that other teams had more numbers. They had better finite success. They had more personnel coming back for another season. But to me, it always just kind of sat there and said, you realize that Michael Penix Jr. isn't going anywhere. One of the best quarterbacks from last season wants to come back for an epic run in 2023. They're not losing any one of their star receivers. Jalen Polk is going to have a full year to be able to grow. Roma Dunze, he doesn't want to go pro. Okay, well, let's see what he does. Jalen McMillan, who had an epic game in the Alamo Bowl, was coming back as well. Cade Westover was coming back as well. The offensive line, I think, lost one player, if I'm not mistaken. They were really the same identity, and probably the biggest catch of all. They didn't have to make a switch at offensive coordinator. I don't know how many people follow the SEC when it comes to Pac-12 football. I love you, Pac-12, and I'm going to be completely real. To all the Washington fans, all of those on the West Coast, Best Coast, I am going to miss Pac-12 After Dark. That was one of my favorite traditions growing up. That was how I truly knew that this was a sport that I could talk about for the rest of my life because of It'd be 1 in the morning, and my girlfriend, now wife at the time, would say, "Why are you up watching Stanford, Arizona State?" Because if I just couldn't get enough of it. But a lot of people probably don't understand that Ryan Grubb had an offer to go to Alabama. Ryan Grubb had an offer to become the OC before Tommy Rees did. He was one of the most sought after coordinators on the market based off what we saw with an 11-2 season underneath Kalen DeBoer. And he said no. He said, "I want to come back. I want to be a part of something special. And I know if we hit on our bells and whistles, we're in a good spot." And so at that point, why pick against Washington? The offense that was hitting its stride at the right time late last season carried itself to an Alamo Bowl victory, which, by the way, is basically the last New Year's Six Bowl that doesn't get the credit. It's like the group of 5 of New Year's Six Bowls, in my way to put it. They march in there. They get a convincing win. They retain all of this offensive talent. They're adding in more talent like Dylan Johnson this offseason. And you're here to say regression is going to set in? I just didn't buy it. So the disrespect that has been given to Washington served as a fuel from the offseason that carried on over into the season. And then, lo and behold, just continued. It never stopped. There's something about being disrespected. I know what that feels like. I remember when I told my friends in college, I was 18 years old and I was in a fraternity, and I said, "I want to go into broadcasting. I want to be a college football analyst. It's a dream job of mine. I think that I'm going to be really good at it." And I had a few people say, "You can talk sports. You're really good at talking sports." And I had another few people say, "Yeah, do you know how hard it is to get in this industry?" And you looking like you. I'm 5'7". I'm a short white dude. I understand it. The odds are stacked against me. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a player. I understand that there are going to be things held against me. But just like Washington, I refuse to quit. I found ways to break into the industry. I knocked on doors. I continue to send out my tape. I continue to send out my reel. And eventually I got my shot. And hopefully I'll land a shot with another network in the meantime. But if not, I'm doing YouTube. And you know what? I'm going to grow this channel as big as possible, because if I know I'm good enough. And Washington has carried that same inertia throughout the entire season. And even going into the national championship, all we hear about is the returning production, the style, the composite scores of the recruiting classes. Well, Michigan had more returning production. Well, Michigan had a higher composite score. Well, Michigan had this. Well, Michigan played in a tougher conference. Well, Michigan did this, and Michigan did that, and Michigan. And all you hear, once again, is reasons to doubt Washington. At this point, it's their calling card, and they're the dogs, but they are also embracing the underdog mentality. They've done it the entire year. I want you to literally go back and listen to every single national media spectacle out there talking about Washington this season. I can tell you this, every single person, except for yours truly, until the Pac-12 title game, and that I apologize to you for, Husky fans, every single game, you've at least seen one time a national analyst pick against Washington, whether it be the Utah game, whether it be the USC game, the Oregon game round 1, Oregon State, the Pac-12 title game. They all picked against Washington at some point. And okay, check the box, we beat Oregon. You ready to stop doubting us? Check the box, we beat Utah. You ready to start doubting us? Check the box against Oregon State. You ready to stop doubting us? Check the box against Oregon. How about now? You done? How about now that we've beaten Texas in a neutral site location and we handle business in this game? All we hear about is Texas, what that offensive line can do, what our defensive line can't do. All we hear is that. You still ready to keep doubting us? And they just kind of went and said, "Yeah, whatever." And the way they carried themselves going into this week, if you watch any interviews and you see the press conferences, hoodies up, sunglasses on, they got music blaring on their AirPods, they're locked in. They were ready to go to war on Saturday for a game on Monday. If you told those players, "Hey, change of plans, we got to move the game up," they would have been geared. They would have said, "Sure, tell us where, what time, we'll be there." That was the attitude. Ever since the word, they've been disrespected. Michael Penix Jr., Heisman-worthy year. Any other year that Jaden Daniels does not become one of the 7 players in the history of college football to throw for 3,000 and run for 1,000 yards in a single season, or 4,000 and run for 1,000 yards in a single season, he wins the Heisman. Some people thought he should have won the Heisman. I actually picked him at the start of the year to win the Heisman. Doesn't win the Heisman. Rome Odunze. Odunze comes out and blows out of a cannon. He becomes an enigma overnight. Doesn't finish in the top 2 for Fred Biletnikoff Award. Finishes 3rd behind Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors. There was no reason Marvin Harrison should have won the award. Felt a little disrespected. The offensive line won the Joe Moore Award. Yet here we are going into the final hours before kickoff in Houston. And what we're hearing? Well, Michigan's defensive line will be able to corral them. Michigan's defensive line will be able to shut them down. Michigan's defensive line will force Michael Penix Jr. to maneuver outside the pocket, and eventually he'll succumb to the pressure. That's what we're hearing from the best offensive line voted on by America and by coaches across the country. That line. That's what we're hearing. The disrespect just doesn't stop. But here's the thing. A team like Washington, at this point, it's music. It's like white noise. It simply is just an outside spectrum that has nothing to do with what their plans are. They ended up having the #1 passing attack in the country this year. They ended up going undefeated and having the most ranked wins in college football. They ended up proving to the world that they can win on 3 different stages of the game. Don't believe me? It's happened. You had to trust your run game with Dylan Johnson against USC. 243 yards later, you come out with a victory over the reigning Heisman champ. You had to trust your defense to get critical stops in the second half against Utah. Lo and behold, an 11-0 shutout and another dub for UW. You had to trust your special teams on the final drive in the last Apple Cup, where this was a rivalry and it meant something to the conference. You trusted your walk-on kicker, who once again had to battle through adversity just to get on the field, to drain a 50-plus yard kick, and he gets a scholarship to save his ass in the process. All of that is the storyline of what you talk about with Washington. They've won offensively, they've won defensively, they've won on special teams. And here we are still wondering, well, what's it going to take for Washington to win? In my opinion, the question turns to, what's it going to take for Michigan to stop Washington? What's it going to take to unravel this entire inertia that we know is being built right now in Seattle that has carried over week after week and has grown? And on the final day of college football, on the last moment in an era of 14 playoffs before games start to have less of a feel during the regular season, because of now it's just about seeding. It's not about competition or quality of play. And we're getting rid of a conference entirely, and we're expanding 2 conferences that are eventually going to take over college football. On the last day, this is the moment where that fireball, that pure angst of hearing from outside noise the entire year, you're not good enough, is set to explode. The time bomb is ticking. It is about ready to erupt. And I don't think Michigan, I don't think fans, I don't think the college football spectacle is ready to see what will unravel the second that you watch that clock strike 0. Because it's a warpath. I have a dog named Max, and I'll end with this real fast. Max was a rescue, and he is my best friend. He has become the light of my life. He is special. He's a very special dog. But special also means he's very attached to me. And when we were living in our first apartment, he found a way to break out multiple times. And then we moved to our second apartment, and he found a way to break out multiple times. And I always thought he was running away from me. No, he was running to me. I was the goal. I was the ultimate trophy in his eyes. He wanted to be around his dad. And it didn't matter if I locked the door, if I changed the locks. It didn't matter if I hid in the bedroom. It didn't matter if I locked the door to my bedroom, if I was in the shower. He would find a way to get to me. That's Washington. Max is Washington, in my opinion. They don't care. They don't care about their path of how they got here. They don't care about how they met up with everybody else along the way. They don't care about how they found their path to Houston. All they care about is hoisting up that national title. And damn best believe they are not going to slow down. So what stands out about this Washington team? They don't care about what you have to say. They don't care about what the outside noise has to say. They're going to do things the way that they see fit, and they're going to do it in their own fashion. And you know what? It works. Great teams aren't great because they don't have weaknesses. Great teams are great because if they realize their strengths, they hone it in, and instead of trying to do the whole song and dance about what makes them unique and dynamic and try to change up things, they just run it to their tempo. And that's what Washington does. They know that when they're in the red zone, they'll hand it off to Dylan Johnson. They know they have 3 receivers that eventually will strut their stuff on Sundays that all can find ways to get open. Doesn't matter if Michael Penix targets 1, 2, or 11. One of them is going to be open, and one of them is going to catch that football. You have a guy like Cade Westover. Guy walks onto the team. Another walk-on. Story process. Comes back for another season. He comes up clutch multiple times this season, especially inside the red zone. He comes up clutch for you inside the Sugar Bowl. You have a kicker, walk on. Doesn't care. Doesn't care how he got here. He's happy to be a part of the team. The no care attitude is what separates this Washington team. And they're 60 minutes away from potentially hoisting up a national title. I believe that at the end of the day, they are walking away victorious. And I believe that this is a special roster. Sometimes there are teams of destiny where you realize one game was the moment that they had locked up the national championship. And in my opinion, last week, how they prepared, how they played against Texas, how they handled business and did not care about the outside noise. That was the moment that I realized Washington is winning this whole damn thing. And in 3 hours after kickoff, I think you will see Michael Penix Jr. cement his legacy in the history of college football.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.